Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Witches Movie Coven. Our dear friend, our host, is flying through the air as we speak. No, she is not flying on her broom. Her broom is retired tonight. She's flying in luxury and in class. Miss Patti Negri is, of course, flying in an aeroplane like normal witches do these days. However, we have a lot of other people here with us. We have our standard group. I should say who I am. My first name is Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I would be a. That is correct. With that, let us begin with the lovely in pink, Miss Heather Greene. Miss Heather Greene.
Hi, I am Heather Greene. I am a journalist and covering occult. I am an author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft. It is the critical guide to a critical history of witches and witchcraft in American television and film. All these films we talk about are often in there. I am also an editor at Llewellyn, and I get to work with lots of wonderful witchy and occult authors there. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm also a Coven member. I'm happy to be here tonight to discuss this movie.
Speaking of our coven, let us move right on over to the ever so lovely Ms. Courtney Buckley.
That's me. Sorry, I dropped my fidget. I'm Courtney Buckley, Ghostbait on Scared and Alone, coven member here at our wonderful coven, and I'm trying really hard not to sink into a deep depression. I'll explain that later.
I understand. And with that, today is a very, very special day in the Mankey household.
Oh, yeah.
Today is Ari's birthday, and I wanted to say happy birthday. I'm sure we'll all say happy birthday, but who better to say happy birthday than the golden boy himself, Mr. Jason Mankey.
So those of you who don't know, Ari is my wife, and today is her 29th birthday for at least the 10th time. I can't remember. But she's had a lot of 29th birthdays. We've been married for almost 20 years. I've known her since she was 18, so we've been together a very, very long time. And she's like, get out of the house, go do your show, leave me alone. It's my birthday. I deserve peace. You should be with the movie coven. That would be better for me. So that's where we are. And I'm Jason Mankey. I've written many, many books for Llewellyn. This was my first book, The Witch's Athame, from 2016. And I'm just so excited to be back with my coven because last week I was gone and I missed Heather's birthday, and I like Gemini birthdays apparently.
Happy birthday, Ari. We miss you.
Everyone says happy birthday, Ari.
Happy birthday, Ari.
We'll see if that works.
We all love. And we are, of course, missing Ms. Patti Negri, who is, of course, the hardest working witch in all of show business. I didn't say a little bit more about myself. I guess I should. My first name is Richard-Lael. We already discussed that. I am known as the gentleman psychic. I'm a psychic and a medium. I used to be a psychic and a small, but I gained some weight. Psychics who are all doom and gloom or love and light. I am a happy medium. With that, let us talk a little bit about tonight's movie. Now, this is it's an older film, so if you haven't seen it, well, it's like 25 years old. So, spoiler alert. No, it's a little older than that.
How dare you? I was alive when this happened.
If you haven't seen
it, that old.
I was 11.
If you haven't seen this movie, there are going to be spoilers. Because it's a movie from the 90s. So we are talking about the 1997 Eve's Bayou. Now, normally, of course, Patti would say a little bit of something, and then she would toss to me for my unbiased synopsis. Now, I'm going to avoid Ms. Courtney Buckley's glance because in this unbiased synopsis, this film takes place in the 1960s in Louisiana. This film, it starts off with an African-American Black family and this little girl who loves her doctor daddy. Her father is a doctor, and she lives in this sort of wonderful 1960s bubble. It's affluent. And Eve's Bayou, as it is explained in the opening, is named after a former slave who this general had come through and was shot and was at death's door. And using voodoo, this slave woman named Eve cured general, and in return, he freed her. And then, of course, it became an affluent area for people of color. And this doctor in the early 1960s, he goes about and he helps a lot of people until they're at this party, and this little girl, her world is shattered. She goes into the barn where they store all of the wine, and she witnesses her father and another woman, well, doing adult things in an adult manner. And when she discovers it, she goes back into the house, and the father has tried to talk her down from this sort of anxiety and the questions of, don't you love mommy, and why would you, what's happening with this, how are you doing this? And he explains to her that things are not always are not always as they seem. And she goes into the room, and she's sort of trying to figure this all out. And she goes into the room, and the older sister tells her, no. What happened was that you went into the barn, you fell asleep, and Daddy was in the barn to get some more wine, and I can't remember the woman's name. She comes in, and Daddy tells her a joke, and she laughed, and they just hugged, and that's all that it was. Well, it turns out that this doctor was a philanderer, and anytime that there were patients that needed to be healed, he had a certain touch that only he could do. In the course of this, the auntie, the sister of the doctor, she is a psychic reader, and it is known that she has seen more than one inside of an asylum, but she is a psychic reader, and she allows this little girl to sit in and listen in on what's happening if she remains quiet. But while they're out and about, they go to this fair where the wife and the sister of this doctor end up by going to this sideshow witch who has the makeup that's a little reminiscent of whatever happened to baby Jane. And in the course of this, the witch tells the wife that in 3 years' time she's going to be happy, but she has to look after her children. So then, of course, not to be outdone, the sister, who is the psychic reader, goes to sit down, and the witch refuses. She says, I'm not, things don't need to be said. And the sister says, well, I've paid you my money, read my fortunes. So the woman says that she sees that there is, that the next person that she marries is going to die. And then at the same time, the sister has this vision of a child being struck by a bus, and they run away. It's all of this craziness. Well, it turns out that the little girl now discovers that that her doctor father is a philanderer, and she's really brokenhearted about all of this. And she goes to the same fairgrounds, and she steals a pineapple, where she herself encounters the witch. And the witch sort of chastises her in the most loving way. Pineapple thief is what she becomes called. Well, it turns out the older sister of this little girl, she breaks down and she tells a very hard truth. And for the sake of our viewing audience, it shall be referred to as SA. She came downstairs, and her father was drunk, and he SA'd her. And this makes little Eve, it makes her so angry, because this is my sister. This is someone that I love, and I want this man dead. I want him dead. I can't believe that he would do this. I want him dead. And so she talks to the auntie and says, well, how do you kill somebody with voodoo? And the auntie sister of the doctor says, well, who do you want to kill? And she says, well, this person deserves it, and he's done some really bad things. She says, well, I don't know. I guess they take some of his hair, some of the hair, and they put it in a voodoo doll, I think is what they do. So this little girl, she steals $20 from her daddy's drawer, and she goes back to that fairground where she meets the same witch. And she says, I need to talk to you. And she says, what are you doing here, pineapple thief? What are you doing here? She said, I need to talk to you because I need someone to die. This person deserves to die. And of course, she makes the joke. Is it your auntie? I can't remember the name, but is it your auntie because she deserves to die? No, it's not her. Oh, too bad, she says. So she says, well, I need this person dead because he's done some really bad things and he needs to go. And what do I do? Well, you've paid me and you've given me the hair and we'll make it happen. Come back here on Thursday. She comes back on Thursday and she has other things have come true. And other things have come to light. And she says, I need it back. I need the voodoo doll. I need it back. And she says, he's already dead. I already put it in a wax coffin down by the snakes. You already gave me the hair. You already paid me. The deal's already done. He's already dead. It turns out then that the child runs to go see her father, and another child is injured by a bus, and they think, okay, everything is fine. But that evening, one of the men that the doctor was having an affair with the wife sees them in this bar, and the little girl is there. Daddy, let's go home. Daddy, let's go home. Daddy, let's go home. And this jealous husband shoots and kills this doctor because you were my friend. How dare you do this to me? You're a philanderer. You have taken control over my wife, and I want you dead. So he shoots him. And then at the funeral, the little girl, or after the funeral, the sister says, they find a letter, and it says that was not the way that happened. And the doctor says, no, I did not do this thing. This is the way that it happened from my perspective. This is how it is. And that's the end. It leaves it very vague. Now, I know it's a lot of ins and outs. There's a lot to unpack. But someone who has always the best historical context, always who is a historian, Miss Heather Greene, what can you tell us about this film?
This film is packed, first of all, and I'll give opinions and all that stuff after. I'm just going to give you 5 quick things that are important to know about this film going in. And first is context. Of course, I love to give context. Then I'm going to talk about the genre that this comes from, Southern Gothic. Then I'm going to talk about the woman director, and that's an important piece. You also have 2 different types of witches or magical people in this, which is important to note. And number 5 is the awards that this film didn't get. So let's first talk about context. Now, what's important about this film, it's 1997, and it has an all-black cast. And that's the important context. Not so much about it context in terms of witch films, because that's sort of a different thing I can get to a little bit of. But this is a film that has an all-black cast. And why is that important? Because that in Hollywood's history is a rarity. And by the mid to late 80s, when Spike Lee came on the scene, the doors started to open. And it wasn't just Spike Lee, but he was one of the he was waving the flag. He helped open doors along with a number of other actors, directors, filmmakers. And so by the 1997, you start to see more of that. Was it perfect? Was every door open? Was it clear? No, of course not. But this is one of those films that captures a story from Black culture, from a segment of America that often is not captured in a way like this. And so this is a historic film in those terms. All Black casts were used in Hollywood in the golden era, purposefully, and most of the time the mainstream movies, or they were done by white actors, directors. They had goals. The 70s, we saw Black exploitation, and people will say, academics often say that Hollywood finally realized there was a market for this type of film in the 70s, of course, after the Cultural Revolution. But one of my favorite academics likes to say the Wiz killed that because it was so bad, and that it stopped for a while. And then, of course, by the late 80s, you start to see a change. You start to see a reopening of this. This is one of the results of this by the late 90s, and is largely considered an amazing film in that respect. So that's really important. Going on to this Southern Gothic. So Southern Gothic was a literature genre that was really popular. You can think of, I have some examples of it. One of my favorite playwrights is Tennessee Williams. That's Southern Gothic. Also, you have he was Streetcar Named Desire, a movie. We've seen Angel Heart. That was Southern Gothic, that movie. Also, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. These films usually bring out they're very eclectic characters. They usually have magic and spirituality in them. Sometimes, in this case, you have voodoo. And not always hoodoo, though. It's always some kind of magic or mystical kind of element to it. Obviously, the macabre. You also have Southern culture. You also have some nature involved in these films as well. And they're usually very rich, culturally very rich. If a fabric is rich, these are rich like the fabrics, you would think. So, other examples of this would be, we haven't done Beautiful Creatures. Have we done that movie? That's another example of Southern Gothic. And of course, this film was not a novel like some of these other ones are a play. This was written, but the writer, who was also the director, pulled from this Southern Gothic tradition. So that is what this comes from. And you can see it with the landscapes, and the narrative is just so rich and so textural that you see that coming through, and of course all those other elements. So now I want to go to the director. The director's name is Kasi Lemmons. She is a woman, which in and of itself is notable. You have to always note when we have a female director, because it was so rare. So many of the movies, especially even by the late 90s, so many of the movies we watched were directed by men, created by men, written by men. To have one that was done by a woman, it's notable, and it's very important to see, just outside of gender, it's important to see the person who created the movie, wrote it, directed it, because they always influence it, especially when you have something that's a little bit more indie like this one. It's not completely indie, but something that's a little bit more controlled by the creators than, let's say, Godzilla versus King Kong. So that's always my go-to.
So neat to that movie.
Just let it alone, Jason. So I need an example. But Kasi Lemmons is also a Black woman. Okay, so you're adding another layer of notability, of importance, to know that she's from Missouri, coming from a perspective that lends itself its own power, its own texture, its own importance, and its own rarity. Not only to have a woman director, but to have a person of color as well. In that is really, and she wrote it and directed it. So Kasi Lemmons is really interesting. She has a great background, Tisch, UCLA. And if you haven't seen, she was actually in a Spike Lee movie. She was an actress first, and then went on to directing. This is her debut. And she also directed, if you haven't seen, Harriet, 2019, fantastic film. So she's very talented storyteller. That's her thing. And she, the interesting thing is, Megan Good, the actress that plays the older daughter, when she got there, this was her first film, and she thought there was many Black female directors in Hollywood. She didn't know that. What she said in the interview is, "I was looking at a unicorn." I love that. So in that case, Kasi Lemmons was definitely a unicorn, and still to a degree is. And then what was my next one? I have a list here. Number 4, the 2 types of witches. I think Richard-Lael pointed them out. We have the psychic counselor, is what she calls herself. That's Mo. Mozella. I love her. Mozelle. She's fantastic. Character. She's an accepted member of the upper class society, the sister of the doctor, well-to-do in this Creole culture. She has a practice that is accepted. She looks the part as far as part of society. Then you have Elzora, who is played by oh god, I wrote her
Diane
name.
Carroll.
Thank you very much. Name was
I'm a
escaping.
huge fan of her. So
Yes,
like
she
doesn't even look like she does. I'm sorry, I'm like
no.
taking your spot. But
No, and
wow.
she actually wanted to. She actually is the one who came up with the face paint. She said, "I want to do this. Let's go." She said, "I want voodoo makeup," is what she called it. So she's the one who did the face like that. But she is the witch. She is outside of society, and what I love about it is that they actually portrayed her as the classic witch in the woods by making you have to go, or making the child have to go through the swamps along in the dark paths to get to her little cabin in the woods where she has the witch she's the magic for mighty witch. She's not good or bad. She's just there to do her thing. So it's two different looks at the use of magic. Neither one is bad. Both are very culturally embedded. And so it's a very interesting little dichotomy they have wrapped into the story. And I love the way that's used. You have elements of hoodoo. You have veve from voodoo in places. Whether all of that is, how accurate that is to modern practice, I cannot speak to. I don't think any of here can really speak to that. But it is definitely woven into this practice. And the last thing is the awards that this movie did not get. So it won a ton of awards. But it did not win an Academy Award that year at all, which would shock many people, because since then it has been given an award by the National Registry and the Library of Congress. It has been claimed the best film of that year. It has a string of awards, in like Black Film Awards. I can't remember all the different awards. There's just a string of awards it's gotten for Best Actor, for Director, for all the things. And it didn't get a single Academy Award. So these are the things to know about this movie. It is very well loved, this Eve's Bayou. And so I will leave it at that, and we can talk about it, because I think it's really packed full of a lot of stuff, and I think different people get different things out of it. And it'll be great to hear from our perspective how we react to this film.
Who would like to start off? I know Ms. Courtney wants to, and I go to you, Ms. Courtney, because I know that this film was hard for you for whatever reasons there may be. No matter who was in the cast, no matter where its place was, I know this film was harder for you than it may have been for others, and I would like to respect you, and I would like for you, if you are comfortable, for you to go first.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to try to do this. First of all, shocking as it may be, I finally didn't hate a movie to start with. While I was watching it, I thought like it was a little slow, but that fit for the South. Like the South just moves slower, and I love that. The scenery was beautiful. I fell in love with all the characters instantly. And I was actually excited. And then I was watching with my friend, and at some point nothing had happened yet, and we looked at each other and we were like, something's off about that dad-daughter relationship. Something's off. And then I gaslit us. I gaslit our intuition, and I was like, no, that's just our trauma talking. It's not everyone is wrong. But no, it was. And trauma recognizes trauma, I guess. So props to the actors for, like, it was the beginning of the movie that felt that way. And that's pretty powerful. So it was amazing. I loved it up until the part where the dad essays the daughter, because I was 11 and my dad was drunk too. But watching Eve get mad when she found out and try her hardest to hex him, and sticking the needles into the doll and, with intention, healed the little girl inside me for a minute. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
And I thought, I thought how beautiful that was because it did something. It helped me until the end when she finds the letter. And she looked at her sister and she said, I believed you. But oh God, no one believed me, so I know what that feels like. And it was awful to watch the adult responsible for that have their words. I understand how, because that's his daughter that loves him, but to have their words taken, like, of course you would say that. You're an abuser. And it doesn't matter what context you think it was in. She was 14. And that was really hard to watch. And I didn't like the way it ended. I wish that it had ended with, you know, Eve trying to take control. Like, I wish that whole piece had not been there because that was really upsetting. And that brought back a lot for me. As far as, I don't know. I think that's the worst part of the trauma, honestly. Like, what happened to me, but not being believed was the worst part. So that was my experience with this movie. So I don't think that I can love it as much as I did in the beginning. But yeah, I didn't know how, I can't not be honest with everyone, with you guys, with our audience, when it comes to movies. There's a reason movies are supposed to bring out feelings in all of us, whether they're good or they're bad. And this did that for sure. And I racked my brain how I was going to come on here and not trauma dump, but I can't, because I can't not be honest. And that's my truth. And that's what this movie did to me.
And Courtney, I would like to say, first of all, you are so incredibly brave. You are so incredibly brave. And I don't have the words to express how much you are loved. I will say that where I haven't personally experienced that, my mother, who was my best friend, did. And she was 3 when her stepfather did that. And no one believed her. And she kept it a secret until she was 50. And when it came out, everyone denied that was what had ever happened. Mm-hmm. They said, oh, he's a man of God, and he goes to church, and he's a good man, and he's a grandfather, and he would never do that. And then my mother's family disowned her. And she lived to be 83, and they, from 50 to 83, 23 years, they disowned her because how dare you say that about my daddy? And I think that I like that it was ambiguous, that did it actually happen that way? My personal thought is, having seen abusers, of course, what would make an abuser, what would make someone even write that letter in the first place, unless that they were afraid of being caught and went, oh, well, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. Look, see, look how good I am. So I think that the abuse actually did happen. That's my... Well,
I think probably the hardest part, if I can just say this last thing, is that it's not even, I want to go back to what I said before. It's not even necessarily the not being believed. It's the not believing yourself, because when people start to question it, and that's exactly what we saw happen. And that, I think, is why it hurt as much as it did, because she has the gift of vision and she tries to show her sister what happened or talk to her sister about what happened. And she goes back and she can't find the memories. And it's that not trusting yourself. And that happened to me. I blocked out because I wasn't believed because of whatever reasons. I remembered bits and pieces, and I blocked out a lot until my dad died, and then I remembered. And the remembering is the worst. So it's almost a blessing that you don't know, but like it's to watch it on screen in front of you. They did a really good job with that. Like the movie was almost traumatizing in and of itself for that reason.
I think I just want to just jump in about that last scene and not to take anything away from your read, because we all, like you said, we come to movies, they're pieces of art, and we mediate them the way we are. We can't watch them in any other way. We bring ourselves to pieces of art to take in and to interpret. The end being ambiguous could be read as if they're going to wash away what happened, but I think there's a more nuanced empowerment to it, because they're not washing away the sister's memories. They're washing away the letter, and without that letter, there's no word from him. He has no voice on what happened. So washing away the letter washes away his voice, which may be the wrong voice, depending on how you read, who's true, which is part of the story, part of what this movie is in the ambiguity of memory, and whose memory is right, and is it really? And she says at the end, and when they wash away the letter, I read that as, we're just going to forget what he said, and now they can live in their truth without having the burden of him breathing down saying it didn't happen. So it's almost like they're releasing themselves from that. So that's how I kind of read it, a little differently than saying, well, let's just pretend this whole thing didn't happen and go about our lives. And that's another way to read it, but that's not how I read it. So I don't know. I'm just adding that in for the.
I agree. I agree with that, with the letter part. It's more so for me what happened before that was so traumatizing.
The conflict between the two right before.
Right. It's just those, like, I mean, I can talk about what happened to me all day, but it's remembering that I wasn't believed, or that I was told I was lying when I was a kid. I was a kid. Why would I lie about that? Like, I went through a lot before coming out about it, but I've graduated therapy, everybody. I'm fine. It's just a lot. But it's that piece of it that was like so raw that, like, I just didn't know it. Like it dug deep inside me and found that one little frayed nerve that I keep behind glass, and it knocked down the glass, and it gave it a little one of these, and it was just that. Like, I'm glad that they washed the letter. I took it the same way that you did. I'm glad that they washed the letter away. It was before that. It was her gut reaction to, I believed you. Those were hard words to hear. I believed you. And then her trying to recall the memory and not being able to, because, either the trauma's taken it, or you start to doubt yourself and you start to doubt your own memories. But it's the same thing that, in witchcraft, I do with my own intuition, like I did in the beginning of this movie, where you just doubt yourself, and that's where they come from for me. So I don't disagree. And I don't think that it was, I think, who is it? Taya said, I'm glad that they touched on a topic like that, because I feel like society sugarcoats and victim blames too much. Yeah. And thank you for everybody in the comments who's sharing this with us. But it that's true. They did it, and they did it right. They did it in a way, as hard as it was to watch and as uncomfortable as it was to watch. And as much as I'm going to have to just, I don't know what, after we're done here tonight so that I can sleep, it did it in a way that was real. And it felt very real to watch. So that's my hot take, guys. That's why I'm battling depression today.
Jason, that's a hard one to follow, but we haven't heard from you. So let's hear from Jason.
I was hoping that I would just disappear from the screen.
Me
and
too.
I would have to talk the rest of the show, because this is a hard movie to talk about. And I'm watching this movie, and I love Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, I'm a dude who watches a lot of sci-fi movies. Of course, I love Samuel L. Jackson. He's Nick Fury. He's Mace Windu. He's Shaft 2.0. To see Samuel L. Jackson in a villain role, like, breaks me. Like, it's just not what I want to see. And that scene that we're talking about, it just hits so hard. The way it's filmed, the way it's portrayed, every bit about it. And I'm watching this yesterday in my living room, and I'm just like, this cannot be happening. This is Samuel L. Jackson. This does not happen. Right? So This is a great film, but it's hard to tell jokes about. That's for sure. You really can't tell jokes about this movie. Wait till we get to the movie minute. You'll see me flail even harder than I'm flailing right now.
Well, you don't have to tell jokes. How did you like it?
I thought it was great. I thought it was a great movie. That was beautifully acted. I love the Creole culture that we don't really talk about. We don't really see people of color on the screen very much in movies to begin with. But then to have a culture like Creole culture, which we really don't talk about, to be on screen, I think is even more powerful. And to show these individuals being successful. And as someone who loves the history of magic, to see magic so interwoven into that society, that it's a part of polite society, not just something that exists on the fringes. I think for a group that talks about witchcraft and magic in movies, that was one of my favorite things. And I'll admit, sometimes while I watch these movies, I'm more zeroed in on the magic scenes than anything else, because I often think that's what we're going to end up talking about. But this movie, there's that, and then there's the other parts of it. And it's just so all-encompassing, and it's great. And it's hard for me to say bad things about it, though I hated the score. So there is that. To me, it sounded like a soap opera score, and you have an area with Zydeco, and there's not enough Zydeco in the score.
I actually have a joke to say.
Oh.
So this has nothing to do with the movie, but I think that it's appropriate here. So during the gold rush, 3 men decided that they were going to go from New York to California to make some money in gold. And Jonathan says, I am going to bring the wagons. And Frederick says, I am going to bring the ladies. Only he didn't say ladies. The garden tools. I'm going to bring the garden tools. And so,
wait, I got it.
Samuel says, okay, well, I'll bring the supplies. And so they get out in the middle of nowhere, and they have their wagons, and they have their ladies, and they're running low on supplies. They say, Samuel, where are the supplies? And Samuel says, supplies, mother. It's a Samuel L. Jackson joke. With that,
I like the garden tools part.
to break the tension a little bit, I thought it was important to say a little bit about that. And you are right, Jason. The score was
not good.
It was just not good. The music was not memorable at all. It wasn't good. And they could have there's some really amazing music in the 1960s when we talk about the ink spots, things.
Yes.
They could have Little Richard. They could have actually had some really, really amazing music, even if it was just in the car, even if it was just in the bar, even if it was just in some of these spaces. Some of that really 1960s music would have really made the film much better.
Where's the Dixie Cups in Iko Iko, which is actually a chant from Voodoo, which is a real thing, and it became a pop hit in 1962. 1963, and the movie opens when that party, and they're playing some really great Zydeco music in that party, and they never really go back to that. And I probably also wasn't helped. I watched this on Freevee, and this is not the kind of movie that needs commercial interruption.
Yeah.
I
did the same.
Yeah, and that was really unsettling. So I think a lot of times too is the music would play and then they would go to commercial, which made the music even more jarring because it made the movie feel like a soap opera in a couple of places to me. And I realized that it wasn't the fault of the film. It was the fault in the way that the movie was being presented. But I still didn't like the music.
I pay for a subscription on YouTube so that I don't get any commercials because they drive me crazy. But I also paid for the movie on YouTube. So you used to, we would go down to Blockbuster, and we'd have to get the VHS, and we'd have to, rewind it if we were kind. But I rented it, as they say, on YouTube, which is maybe not the best venue. I watched it on my phone, and I played chess. And so it was like this big, but it was fine. I definitely enjoyed. I thought it was beautifully acted. I thought the costuming was beautiful. I thought the acting was hard, but it was beautiful. It was there were some very powerful truths, and on a magical standpoint, I did love that they did show the two sides of these magical beings. And the one who did the voodoo, she was like, well, you paid me, and you gave me his hair. What do you want? I already did the magic spell. You can't take it back. And that is, I think, so true when it speaks to magic. When you have put your intention out there, it is almost impossible to break a spell that you have already put in motion. You just have to let it weigh its course.
And she was really adamant. Do you really want this? Are you 100% sure that this is what you want? And Eve said yes, and the spell was put into motion. I also like the sort of ambiguity of the magic in this film, because Eve sets up her father's death in the shooting by what she tells the school teacher, the jealous husband, and then he puts everything together. So it's like, was it the spell? Was it just her anger at saying something? Or maybe those two things are the same, is another way to look at it.
It really can be. When the child was angry enough, the child was practicing witchcraft in and of herself. The little girl was angry, and justifiably so. She was angry. And when you are a little girl of 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, and you are coming into your own, and that's where magic begins. You can't...
Also, if you're a little girl of 37 who does hexing, that's something you have to pay attention to and be careful with, because as someone who actively participates, that's my kind of magic, man.
Do you
Jason,
see why
none
I
of
wear
those,
these evil
none of
eye
those will help
bracelets
you.
on
None of those will help you.
On every show, evil eye bracelets.
None of them will help you.
Counter Courtney. It's like, I gotta put up wards in my house. There's witch bottles everywhere. Everything is about thwarting Courtney's hexes because I dared to say a bad thing about The Killing Tree. Which, by the way, was my idea to watch. So you still owe me for that.
So every time that the new game is every time that one of our coven members mentions The Killing Tree on the show, all of the people in the chat need to drink.
I suggest buying a big bottle of Jameson before every show, because everything always comes back around to the
Killing Tree.
Well, okay, so I just want to address. So Haley says all magic comes with a price. Now, here's the thing: not in my practice. In my practice, it's I don't do, like, I never got into witchcraft until I let go of that whole like rule of 3 or any of that stuff, because that's not what it is to me. What it is to me, and again, I'll preface this by saying my own personal practice, not everyone else's, my own personal practice. I am not a good witch or a bad witch. I'm the witch for money. I do what needs to be done without the money part. But I do what needs to be done, whatever that is, hexing Jason for opening his mouth, whatever it is. Either way, it's very powerful, but it's not that it comes with a price. It's that once I let go of it, once I've done what I need to do and I've let go of it, I don't have control over it anymore. So what I'm asking for to happen will happen in its own way, whether I contribute to it or not. So just the same as she kind of set that up, like, I have to be very careful what I do. That's why I won't mess with love spells, because I don't need anybody showing up at my door being crazy about it. Like, if I hex somebody with the intention of death, for, let's say, it's not necessarily, I may imagine that, I may mean that, but that's not what happens. The part of them that's causing other people pain dies, or something to that effect, where they become a whole another person. It's the same as the death card in tarot. Doesn't mean actual death, it means change. So it's very right. No, I know, but it's not that's it's not that it costs me any part of myself, because it doesn't. It's almost like calling to justice, and I think it's that little girl inside me that never got it that gives that power. A venting hex, we'll see. I'll work on it.
I'm gonna jump in and just say that I absolutely love this film, and I can watch it over and over. The music did not bother me whatsoever. I get so absorbed in the every single character has its own story, its own richness. The acting was amazing. I love the fact that this movie has, as we're talking about Creole culture, an all-black cast that isn't made to put on display of marginalization and all the other subjects that usually we find here. It's a story about people. It's a story about a family. It's a story, and it's just so rich. And I love the fact that how it came to be. I love the fact that the director is the writer of the film, and that Samuel Jackson actually made this happen. It was turned away originally. I mean, and watching this film, you can tell this is storytelling at its best. This is cinematic storytelling at its best. Whether you like the music or not, whatever. This is what I always say is that a film story should lead. Everything else should serve the story. She does this perfectly here. This and just by Courtney's reaction, which was very heartfelt and deep, you can see she did her job. She told a story, a hard story.
It was a hard story.
A hard story. It penetrated every character. I love Moselle. She's my favorite character in the whole
film. Moselle.
I love her. I love the actress. I love her dimples. I love the costumes. I could watch this movie probably once a week. This should have won Academy Awards. And probably the only reason it didn't is because it was an all-black cast. And it was beat out by, I believe it was Titanic, or was it Shakespeare in Love? I can't remember.
Both are terrible.
It was cinematic storytelling at its absolute best. And this is the way I love films to be. Which one? Shakespeare in Love or Titanic, Courtney?
Titanic, obviously.
Obviously.
Too long. The
Jason,
actual sinking of the Titanic took less time.
Oh my
Too soon?
God.
Too soon? Can't make Titanic jokes? Too
I
soon?
thought this movie hurt me. Jason has now officially hurt me worse.
Oh.
Titanic is an excellent big blockbuster movie.
That was historically inaccurate and was a load of...
It was very...
Doesn't matter.
This movie is a better cinematic... It's a better... And
I'm going to tell you the thing about Titanic that drives me crazier than anything else is that in first class, they go to tea and she's wearing gloves and you don't do that. You take your gloves off and you set them on the table when you're first class. You don't wear your gloves to tea. It's an irritation of mine. With that,
it's qualifying. It's right there. It's qualifying.
Listen, you all can have your opinions about Titanic. I'll hear none of them because to me they're all again irrelevant. This movie, I would not know anything about the Titanic if it wasn't for this movie. And I know it's historically inaccurate. That doesn't matter because I was obsessed with this movie and then became obsessed with the actual disaster. And I've learned more about it than anyone should.
When I saw the Titanic, I was in a theater that had a leaky air conditioner. So the entire time it was blip, 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 blip.
How immersive and what a gift.
It was incredibly. Let us go to you, Miss Courtney. Do you have any quotes in this film?
I only have a couple because let's face it, I was distracted. Some
of the older daughters' jabs at her mom are pretty rough.
Yeah. My favorite one, so one of them was when the mother like cut her finger or something, and then Eve came in and called her out for saying a swear, and the mom said, "You shouldn't be sneaking up on people when they're swearing to themselves." I thought that was pretty funny. My absolute favorite line, and it was the part where it started to turn around for me for just like a hot second, was when Eve just turned to her aunt and said, "How do you kill someone with voodoo?" And I was like, if that little girl is not me, like, I love her. Then she goes to the witch's house and she's banging on the door or whatever, and the witch screams, "Get the hell off my property before I cook and eat you." And I was like, well, there it is. That's what I want to be when I grow up.
Yep. Woman in the woods.
Yep. And then I was very emotional while this was happening, but the last lines of the movie, where she, as the narrator, says, "Like others before me, I have the gift of sight, but the truth changes color depending on the light. And tomorrow can be clearer than yesterday. Memory is the selection of images, some elusive, others printed indelibly on the brain. Each image is like a thread, each thread woven together to make a tapestry of intricate texture. And the tapestry tells a story, and the story is our past."
It's beautiful.
So
That was a very
those are my
beautiful,
quotes.
very powerful quote. Mr. Mankey.
I just didn't know people were so attached to Titanic. Jeez.
Jason, no one's letting you on the door. No one's letting you on the door. No one's letting you on the door.
Jason, I'll share the door with you. And
Thank you,
then if it
Richard-Lael.
starts to stink, then I'll kick you off.
Oh,
Can I go on the door?
I mean,
Heather's
I'm
welcome
going
on
to tell
the
you this. I'm going to tell you this. I don't really care about you. I only want your vote.
oh my God.
Sharks are bad. I really don't like sharks.
I mean, maybe the Titanic had a big battery and it started sinking because of the weight, and there are sharks.
Oh my God.
It's going to be a long summer, isn't it? It's going to be a really long summer for all of us.
Jason Mankey, do you have a movie minute?
How the hell am I supposed to be funny for 2 or 3 minutes when our movie is Eve's Bayou? What's there to make fun of? The great performances, the beautiful cinematography, the story, because there's so much there to tell jokes about. I found the movie's score a little disappointing, as we talked about earlier, but that might be because of my love for Zydeco. Of course, that's a very small quibble. I'd love to tell you how this movie stars Nick Fury from the Marvel Universe, but Samuel L. Jackson has always been way too badass for that. To be honest, the Marvel Universe stars Samuel L. Jackson as Samuel L. Jackson. Nick Fury feels more like a nickname than a character. There's only one Samuel L., and I, for one, am way too smart to make too many jokes about the snakes on a plane guy, which I did see in the movie theaters, and I think that movie's awesome. I often read write-ups online of all the movies we see, and just so you know, Roger Ebert, the movie critic, called Eve's Bayou the best movie of 1997. One critic recently called it one of the greatest director debuts in American cinematic history. Again, how does anyone make fun of that? I guess I could tell the joke that Eve's Bayou was the feel-good movie of 1997, but the fact that the movie was even made is a triumph and a feel-good moment, considering how poorly Hollywood does with movies created by and starring people of color. Sometimes these bits write themselves. Richard-Lael only makes it halfway through the movie, somehow still comes up with a synopsis that makes more sense than the actual movie. Courtney talks about how she watched the movie while driving and that she couldn't see the road because of the tears coming out of her eyes.
This is one time, Jason.
I'll never forget it. While the rest of us groan over a film, Heather will inevitably tell us how much she loves a particular movie, and it's the most important which movie of the year whenever it came out. And then Patti will admit that she watched the movie on her phone at 2 a.m. because I'm starting to believe that Patti is a literal vampire and only went to Romania to renew her vows to Dracula. It's the only thing that can explain how she can watch movies at 2 a.m. on her phone and has the energy to do the 666 public appearances she does every year. So you just can't make fun of this movie. The movies are easier to make fun of when they're bad. So all I can do is take pot shots at the Coven. That's all I can do. It's so not fair. This is totally not fair.
I liked it.
Maybe next week's might be one of those bad movies. I don't know.
I'm hoping. We need
what do we have
Pumpkinhead
next
4.
week? It's a summer.
Summer of Fear, also called the Stranger in Our House is the other name for it. It's a Wes Craven movie.
What year did it come out?
I want to say 78 or 79. It's with Linda Blair and some good hair. Get ready.
Loves films.
You're going to love the last scene, Courtney. I cannot wait.
Okay, I'll try not to
1978.
disassociate through it.
So with that, we'll talk about next week's film when we talk about when we're there. But we have like 5 minutes left, so I guess we have to vote now. One's up or one's down. There's a lot to go in here, but I'm going to vote.
No, just kidding.
Oh my god!
We are
the movie that should have won the Academy Award.
We are
One's up.
Unanimous. And I'm going to tell you this. I went into this film. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I went into the film thinking that I would not like it. It was dry in the beginning, and then I went to dinner with a friend, and I said, "Oh, we're watching Eve's Bayou, and I'm just not into it." And he says, "No, watch it, because you're going to love it. It's hard, but it's a good one." And my friend Romy was right.
Oh, it's a great movie.
It's
such a good movie. And I didn't see it when it came out because that was the year when I had no money and I didn't see any movies other than the Titanic later on cable. So I'm very glad that we watched this movie.
So we have in the comments, we have 2 ones up. We have 3 ones up. Do we have anybody else? Any other? No. Okay.
Is this completely unanimous?
It is completely unanimous.
Has that ever happened except for on the day that we watched The Killing Tree?
And Your Highness.
And Your Highness.
I don't think it has. I think
there's been a few other ones. We'd have to look back. I mean, The Craft.
Well, okay, yeah.
Also, I think we just kick people out of the coven if they gave this movie a down. You know, like, too bad. You're done.
Yeah.
Some things are like unforgivable.
It's a hard film, but it is a powerful film. It is an important film. It is important on so many levels. That's all we can say with that. We have 4 minutes. Let's go back and let's see if we have anything that's coming up. Anybody who has anything coming up?
I do. I will jump in. I've got Mystic South in 3 weeks in Atlanta. That's 3 days. It's the 26th, 7th, and 8th, I believe, of July. There is there it is, 26th, 7th, and 28th in Atlanta. There is a Facebook group you can join if you're coming. There is 3 more weeks before we launch, and it's a fun-filled weekend of mystical, magical workshops and all kinds of things. So I hope to see some of you guys there. And I think that's it for now. I'll stop there.
Jason Mankey.
Mystic South is really great. I am free until October. I've got like no events the rest of the summer. That has not happened since the pandemic. So I'm really excited to do nothing other than watch movies from 1978 and text them to Courtney. I asked I'm taking a road trip to LA, but that is not a witch event, really. It's just a time to harass our producer, Rob.
Miss Courtney Buckley, anything coming up?
Not really, but I would like to say a heartfelt congratulations to Nathan, my son, who had his moving up ceremony today. He's officially a high schooler, which means I'm officially old, but he worked really hard and I'm really proud of him. And it's been an emotional day all around. So I'm going to be going to sleep after this.
And that kid grows a better mustache than I do. Like, it's incredible.
I can't wait till he grows one like mine.
That's what he's going for. He talks about it all the time. He's like, I can't shave it. It doesn't look like Richard-Lael's yet.
Well, it's going to take a little bit of grooming, a little bit of manipulating, a little bit of wax, but it's well worth it. I will be in Dallas, Texas, coming up on the 20th. I'm going to go see Ghost. It's a long story. I'm going to go see Ghost. I don't know which one, but Ghost. And then I'm going to be at an antique store where I'll be reading tarot. And I don't know anything about that either because my brain is mush. But I am always thegentlemanpsychic.com. I'm so easy to be found. I am a little bit of everywhere. There are some fakes out there. So this is across the board. Jason Mankey's had this problem. I think Heather's had this problem. Courtney has had this problem. Patty has certainly had this problem. There are folks out there who will contact you and they will say, "Oh, beloved, the spirits have told me," and they'll come in as Jason Mankey or Heather Greene or Richard-Lael, and we are here to tell you we have the one account. We will never, ever, ever contact you first. You can contact us for readings. You can contact us for books. You can contact us for whatever other reasons, but we will never contact you for those said reasons. So you can find us at our actual websites and medias of social, and we have about 20 seconds. There's one thing left to do, and that is what witches love to do, and that is to cackle. Here we go. At the count of 3, 3, 2, 1.